everybody, and welcome back. We appreciate your service this evening. Passed out an agenda, and we'd like to begin with a review of the WHS improvement project. And I'm not going to go through the agenda. We'll just start with the project.
Is that
please.
my slide? Okay. So I went back through the worksheet that I handed out in February, updated all the numbers with the new tax rate, put the assumptions at the top because they weren't there the last time that I ran the calcs, updated the interest rate to kind of what we're seeing in the market. We may get a little bit better interest rate when we actually go to borrow, but the last time we had talked with Davenport, they were seeing around 4.5 and suggested adding about 50 basis points, which is half a percentage point to it. So just use 5% for a round number to do the estimate on. Assume the term would be 20 years and used a $60 million project cost. That assumes that we use the reimbursement resolution that we have on file currently and reimburse the whole project, or reimburse the architect fees of the project. You could potentially save the money that we've put into it to this point. We don't want to do a reimbursement on, we only want to borrow the actual cash that we need at that point. Either one would be fine. We're prepared to do either of those, but I ran these on worst case scenario or highest case scenario. So in the first budget work session or council retreat, when we talked about this, there were kind of two options running parallel. One of them had a planned borrowing in the fall of 26. Concern with that was, from the schools and from the council, was that we would be unable to capture the summer of 2026 with construction. You'd have to wait to actually start hard construction when the kids got out in 2027. So the scenario we ended up on was a borrowing in the spring of 26. So the you would have the borrowing when the first couple draws on the contract came in. Maximum payment came out to about $4.8 million. That's a little bit higher than what it was just because of the interest rate fluctuation, and that payment could fluctuate $200,000-$400,000 either way, just depending on what the final interest rate on the bond sale ends up being. Debt reductions, these numbers won't change. We pay off 3 debts between now and 2029, kind of final phase of the need for the payment. 2011 payoff in 2027 of $311,000. 2011 payoff in 2028 of $104,000, and then the Kate Collins Middle School payoff 2029 $380,000. So that's debt reduction of $796. You can apply it to the project. Total debt service need of $4 million. Real estate penny value based on the budget of 2026 is right around $300,000. So debt service need of 13.3. I think the last one that I showed you guys, the debt service need was 14.5 because the penny value was about 270, I believe, at that point. So 2026, that one's already programmed, $900,000. 2027, 5 more cents to get to 2.4 million, or that would be 8 cents total towards the project. And then 2028 of 5.5, which would be a total of the 13.5 needed. $4,050,000 to cover the debt service need of $4,017,000. We'll round all those numbers off as we get closer to the end, once we get a bond sale and things like that, and we know exactly what it is, what we need. And then also, if your penny value were to increase between now and 2028, when you need the full price of the bond, that would also reduce the need, which is kind of why we said let's start at 3, hit a middle ground in 2027 of 5, and then hope in 2028 you don't actually need 5. You need something more along the lines of 2 or 3 based on appreciation of the values of properties.
What would happen if hypothetical walking through the scenario of a 30-year bond?
It would just reduce. I didn't run a 30-year. I don't know if they would term it for 30 years without the interest rate going up pretty significantly. I could ask Davenport that when we run kind of the funding scenarios. It would make your total cost about a quarter of the way down the page. That would go up pretty significantly because you'd be paying interest for all 30 of those years, and reduce your maximum payment. But I don't know order of magnitude on what it would reduce it. But I could certainly run that and ask Davenport if they would even allow a 30-year bond, because I'm not sure what they value the life of the asset at on that. Just 20 seems to be the most common
It's
on.
lasted 100 years.
Fair enough. And I don't know what the VPSA, like if we were, so we could go one of two routes. You could either, the last one we did, we were seeing more favorable, and the timing didn't quite line up to be in VRA when we did the refinancing of the note in the spring. So we went out and we got our own credit rating, and that went fine and would go fine. Again, you have money you're setting aside for the project. You don't have any debts that you're not going to be able to service. So I would anticipate that going fine again. If you were to hop into the VPSA pool, I'm not sure if they put hard parameters on theirs. And the other thing that's outstanding that could bring this down, I think the lit loan is open. We feel like we'll get some clarity on whether we'll qualify for that. It won't cover the whole project. But maybe you get yourself in a spot where it covers $10 million, $5 million. And so all of a sudden now you can cover your architect work and your first draw, and you don't have to borrow until the fall. I was just kind of running.
Yeah, I was just thinking
Worst
about
case.
it today is like, you know, that there's not gonna be another school project of this order of magnitude in terms of cost, for the foreseeable future. And could we buy down, scale back the rate even marginally, recognizing that the long-term cost is
A little bit
a little bit more, but not knowing too, you know, I wish any of us could predict what the interest rate market will be at the time of borrowing, but I optimistically think that it may be more favorable. And so by the time we actually go to the bond market, and so if we could extend the note, yes, it costs more, but it could be a mechanism to hold back a penny or two.
Well, secondly, does the city fall under the PACE program guidelines for upgrading high school? Or because we're working on getting into the PACE program for, I guess, businesses in the community for bringing their facilities more energy efficient and more storm ready or natural disaster ready. And I know that one of the selling points on that was you know 100% loans for a longer period as opposed to traditional business loans being somewhere in the 15 to 20 year range, and you know needing 20% of the total cost up front. That the PACE program would offer the ability to do 100% financing for a longer note.
Same interest rate?
I don't know. That's why I was.
Davenport's pretty good about bringing all the options to the table when we chat with them. Like, they were the ones that said you might stack your lit loan on top of your borrowing. But I can certainly ask that question. They were helpful when I think we were refinancing the last note to run down, is it lit loan eligible or not? That's certainly something we can ask. I think the other thing that the schools are working on currently is the
Construction grant.
yes, and it's state funds, and I can't remember the name of the program, but I know they're currently working on. I think they've submitted that application and are working on submitting the lit loan application, since they're doing the since the procurement is what's the name of the type?
CM at risk.
Yes, construction management at risk instead of an actual bid.
Scap or something,
The
grant.
lit loan application isn't built for that because it's not cut up to the procurement code.
Okay.
So they had some questions on, can we do that? The lit loan folks from DOE responded back, yeah, absolutely. But then when we got into the application, the application's not built for that. So they're going back and forth with VDOE of how do we correctly fill the application out so that it doesn't end up getting punted out, because they want to be able to speak into the bid on the project. Well, you can speak into the bid on the project and how the project's, to the design of the project, and that VDOE can speak into that, but there's just no formal bid process because you get a maximum cost, which we've not received maximum cost on it too. The maximum cost could end up being a little bit lower. I was just trying to get, orders of magnitude for this is what you could be signing up for. Most conservative, the hope is we start to scale to chip away at it. Some, I don't think you chip away at it, unless you go to a 60-year financing. I don't think you chip away at it, 5 or 6 cents, but you could chip away at it, 2-3 cents. And that was our experience the last time too, when we did the $20 million issuance, 20 or 18.9, 20 million, for, round numbers, $20 million issuance for the first phase. Did the same thing, three-phased approach, and by the time we got to the third phase, I think they had only had to do half of the third phase because the penny had appreciated, some new revenues had come in, and they were able to buy that down a little bit, which is why you're trying to strike a balance between don't go too crazy on the front end in case you don't need it, but also don't leave yourself in a lurch on the back end where you've got to do 10 cents.
And we would be cutting, that we'd have to take or initiate the loan January, March.
I had a plan of May of 2026 with the thought being, if they're really trying to, if the schools are really trying to grab that second summer, you'd be getting your first, or that first summer, I'm sorry, the 2026 summer, you'd be getting your first heavy construction draw in June, most likely. You can cash flow, that's one of the things we were gonna talk about a little bit. The bond fund is part of, all of the other funds. It's one big pooled cash account. So we could go ahead and appropriate the funds knowing that we're gonna borrow them. They would run the funds a little bit in the red until we did the borrowing, which is not alarming or odd, because we have plenty of money in the bank account to cover it in total. And then by the time you got to the end of the year, it would all be trued up with the
Balance out.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of being part of a bigger general fund, bigger school fund, water, sewer, all of those funds are in one pooled cash account. So we would account for the bond fund being in the negative for a couple months and then correct that on the back end when we wouldn't charge it interest or anything. Correct that on the back end when we actually borrowed the funds. You just don't want to get where you're drawing down 20, 30, $40 million and don't have the interest. If you got to draw down 4, 5, 6, you're going to be fine because you already have 2 over there to start to cover the architectural work. You've got the million that we sent in December, and then the 900,000. So you've got $1.9 million there of the $4 million architect contract. So as long as you don't start getting into those super heavy draws, you'll be. And as long as you don't want to go over the end of the fiscal year with that fund in the negative eyes.
So if we or the school division went with the CMAR procurement method, I mean, my understanding is that requires us to pass an ordinance to accept that procurement method. I don't know if we've done that. Because I don't think that's just an entitlement to the General Assembly. I think that's a procurement method that has to be authorized by ordinance.
So I think we went and checked through that. The school board passed whatever their form of a resolution is, and
Okay.
we shared that. I think Jordan did the work on that. I could probably go back and find it.
I was curious,
He said that was adequate.
As the bondholder, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I was curious.
Yeah. He said what the schools had done was adequate to use that procurement method for us not to find ourselves in a tight spot and an audit and then to be able to draw against the BPSA loan. But if you want to double check if we need to pass something, we certainly can. But we had, that was one of the questions that I had on the procurement was, since we're the bondholder, can they do it under their own procurement? And the answer was yes, since we're in essence, just the fiduciary.
Yeah.
So I think part of the plan is to bring, as we wrap up, hopefully a budget process, is to bring an appropriation for this project in June. And before we do that, I just want to confirm with the group that we're moving forward with the project and be clear that there are, in addition to the tax rate implications in the budget that we're working on currently, the 26, you can see that we're going to have ensuing increases as well. So it's going to be big project, biggest project in the community, probably biggest borrowing in the community. Just want to make sure we're good. Sounds great.
And you'll get a
Yeah,
crack at that.
I would say that everyone is consensus that high school is going to happen and it has to happen. 60 million seems like a lot, but a new high school is going to be north of 150 if you were to demolish and start from scratch. And that's, kind of bare bones picking it.
Sure.
So, I mean,
Okay.
it's a necessary evil.
We've already established,
Yeah.
we have.
And you'll get a
We
crack
have
at a
to be.
formal.
Sorry
vote
to belabor
in
the point.
Yeah, no,
Appropriation ordinance.
understand your need.
All right. Any other questions about the high school project? What?
No, we'll start prepping the ordinance it'll have a required public hearing because it's of that size. And then a bond closing ordinance will come in sometime between January and June of 26.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is budget process, ordinance adoption, introduction and adoption. So hopefully, our work tonight will conclude, or perhaps your work tonight will conclude with the introduction of the, we need a tax rate ordinance and a budget ordinance. And so our goal would be, the staff's goal is for the council to give sufficient guidance or make sufficient progress to introduce those ordinances. And then we would be on a schedule to adopt at the May 12th meeting. Is there anything we need to add about process for that?
No, we'll follow the same, as soon as we, start to move forward on the budget ordinance, probably do a presentation on the CIP. We've been kind of kicking that back, waiting to see where the budget, ordinance fell. So probably do a presentation on the CIP fund, at the May 12th meeting with a recommended introduction, at the May, whatever the second meeting in May is, and then adoption at the, first meeting in June. And then we'll start work on small cap stuff, smaller things that got cut out of the budget, trucks and things like that, that we can pay for with fund balance. We'll start work on that and probably see a listing in first meeting in June, and then bring an appropriation ordinance. Second meeting in June for adoption, first meeting in July, so that way those folks will have the entire year to buy those trucks and things like that, because they take a little bit longer. Do you want to hit the question on the larger items now, that might be impacted by some of the changes in the market?
Oh, the equipment?
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna go there, but if you wanna go there, then go ahead.
So a couple of the items we might bring a little bit earlier. We have a flush truck that there's funds in the net position in the sewer fund to buy. That's about a $700,000 piece of equipment. We have a couple of dump trucks that aren't of that size, but when you start to aggregate them, get to be up towards, take the 700 and a couple of dump trucks and you're at $1 million in equipment. Some of our Excel group and a couple of those folks are guaranteeing pricing, I think, until the end of May. And then after that, they're gonna start to bake in some of the economic changes, the realities that they're starting to see, or whatever that might be of the tariff costs. So since they have guaranteed pricing until May 28th and we have funds in that position, usually we would hold those until June. But since the pricing might go up as much as 10%, we may go ahead and bring those ordinances now and get started on those purchases. They'll still be probably at least 6 months to a year out from delivery, because that's how long it takes to get the chassis and everything put on the chassis and get it built. And we're seeing that, I think we heard a similar story or a similar edict from the landfill, where they were saying they're trying to buy a compactor and that's $1 million piece of equipment, and does the landfill going to go ahead and work on that now and guarantee the pricing, because they're seeing some pretty significant price increases come into the year. So we may bring a couple items a little bit out of order, just because we're trying to get guaranteed pricing and save the money on it.
And we know those prices will be guaranteed, tariffs or no tariffs?
I think the idea would be you sign a letter of intent and send them a purchase order. So the price is locked at that point.
There will be documentation securing the price. But we'll bring that to you. We're just giving you a verbal heads up tonight.
If you see something that looks out of order, that may be.
Well, I'm just saying, as long as it's locked, go ahead and bring it. And
So, are we ready to move to the rate?
Mhm.
Okay. So, again, I think it seems to me that some heavy work needs to be done, or the most important work needs to be done around the real estate rate. Staff is quickly, my instincts tell me that it probably would have been a good idea to think about options less than 89. And so we've worked up some stuff, if that's what council wants to see. And I think a general statement I would make is that at some point, as you work away from an 89-cent tax rate, you begin to dilute, or if not completely step away from progress towards stated goals that are accomplished in the budget. But we've worked up some stuff that I think reduces the rate by 3 or 4 cents, preserves progress to some of those stated goals, not all, but some. And then I would think council can give us guidance whether we're good at that point, whether we're good at 89, whether we're good at something slightly less than 89, or whether, than say 85 or so, or if there's still more work to be done. So let's, do you have a slide to kind of introduce what some of those ideas are? So trying to get from 89 to 85, this is what, and this is, please treat this as concept. There might be some number refining that would occur to really get a specific ordinance or a specific budget. But we're looking to reduce the budget by $1.2 million. We would reduce the money allocated for what is described, there's a salary scale and replotting, you might call that progress on the pay and classification study. But that's really the large investment in employee compensation. And that preserves sort of across the board raises that we think helps you approach a market-based pay. The next item, $127,000, this is kind of routinely what we do to balance. Cameron will scan the operating budget and identify equipment that is currently funded with recurring revenue and pull those items out and fund them with fund balance that we would identify. And again, that's the process that everybody should be familiar with, that we do on an annual basis. Mr. Short, sorry to inform you that I would recommend removing the Community Vitality Fund if we were headed to 85 cents. And that gets you a full cent on the tax rate. And then we have $73,000 worth of new program initiatives in the Economic Development and Tourism Office. And then similarly to the heavy equipment, we've identified some IT hardware that we could legitimately regard as a one-time purchase and pay for with fund balance. So that, again, is in concept how you might move from 89 to 85 and preserve progress on positions, employee compensation, your debt service for the school project, commitment, and fulfill your obligation under the school funding formula. I think that's...
So what was this first amount? Was that the 2.6 million initially?
Yes, ma'am.
And so we're saying we're gonna just do 600?
Two. No, that's
Two
a
million of it?
reduction
Oh, so
amount.
we're, okay. And then the Community Vitality Fund. I mean, I'll just say again, and I don't have any qualms with saying this, I'm in favor of the Community Vitality Fund, like all the way. I mean, as soon as I heard about it, it was a different name, and we know what that was, but it's all about the packaging. I mean, I'm in favor of that. And I'll just say, I'm in favor of the 89 cents. I mean, I'm in favor of the 89 cents. And I was in favor of the 92 cents. I ain't got no qualms about saying that. And that's part of what this is.
Well, we appreciate the...
So I'm gonna sit back here and I'm gonna let y'all work it out.
Well, I would offer that, I mean, I appreciate, one of many ways to get to 85 cents, right? And so, obviously there are certain aspects of it that are not included. One being, while would be a little more, challenging, I reflected on, I think it was slide 2 last night of your presentation, Mike, where, and if you have that, that'd be great. That slide would be great. It's, if you've got that on the laptop.
If you excuse me for a second, I can run get up.
Oh, I thought you might have it, so I'll go off memory then.
Okay.
All right, so, it was, additional cost to the organization with, moving from an equalized rate of 69 cents. And so off the top was $840,000 for the school, right? So that's, we could just sit here and assume all revenue is the same, but we're gonna have to come up with another $840,000 of revenue for the school, because of the 42.5%. And then we had the, $120,000, $140,000, I'm going off of memory here, for, the rise in, the employee insurance.
Correct.
Sorry, the cost for insurance. And you start adding 130, 140, 160, 100, so before you get not too long, somewhere between 6 to 8 cents, you gotta come up with over, say, 69 cents. You gotta come up with it, because those are sunk costs that we could blink, have the same revenue as the same, and just to make sure no error, you know, my margin of error, let's say 6 to 8 cents. Somewhere in that swing, because I don't have the slide up, is without blinking, those are sunk costs just because of inflationary pressures and commitments that we've made to the school system. So then we look towards a 13, 14 cent debt service on a high school, and staff has made, again, I don't challenge it or question it, a stepped approach over a 3-year period to get to the required rate to account for the debt service once we go to the bond market. Well, so we're stepping into that with a $900,000 tranche. So 3 cents on the tax rate just to do that. Now, my fuzzy math here, I'm already at almost a dime, right? And I haven't done anything other than just holding tight to what it was, adding in my inflationary and cost of doing business, and then I add on the debt service. So everything else on the list that we've talked about for 6 months, we can't do, even if we just didn't left the rate generally where it is right now. And so what I find important to consider is, you know, I take notes of every single person who speaks, who came up, and I appreciated every single one of them that came up. And so, in no particular order, here's the things that I heard. What are some other revenue sources to cover the increase, right? So I've not heard anything, we've not asked, so to be fair, I've not asked, but I've not heard anything about mills, lodging and sales tax. I've not heard anything about cigarette taxes. I've not heard anything about any other revenue that we could kind of dig into other than real estate. I thought that was an important point last night. I heard folks that got up there and complained about, you know, wanting to equalize the rate generally, but that police officers need more money. So if we did nothing and did the debt service for the high school at 3 cents, the person who came to speak against, one of the individuals who came to speak against the tax rate last night, wants more police officers. So that's got to get equated in there someplace. Another one got up there, said police officers need additional pay. Firemen need to be protected. We agree that we need to help our police force and our fire department. Housing should be more affordable. Fire police support. We need to support our first aid crew. Another one, what are other revenue sources we could look at? Another one, what are some other revenue sources we could look at? The other one is, what's the crisis? And I think that's a really important question. I wrote that one, put the quotation marks on there, because I thought that was an important question. CASA is is threatened with losing their a significant part of the federal funds that flow through the state that go support their court advocacy program. The Children's Advocacy Center, I don't see $50,000 cut out of that, right? So that's not been offered up as a cut. And I don't think it should, because I think it's an important resource. But I think through what the trend is, what we're looking at, what the impacts are going to be to the most vulnerable of our community and our population, 1 cent on the tax rate in perpetuity to support organizations that can deliver services that we would not otherwise as a government be able to afford to levy to the community, I think is a bargain. You know, I don't see a cut in the $400,000 we're giving to the Waynesboro Fire Rescue Squad. Well, why? Because they deliver a vital service as a not-for-profit to our community that we would not otherwise be able to afford as a government. That's the same thing for the Community Vitality Fund. So I'll pivot off of that just for a moment to, I'm supportive of evaluating the salary scale. And you know, I'll tell you of one other thing, and I'm kind of a little all over the place, but apologize. But I'll think of, you know, I talked to a few folks ahead of last night, and there's one gentleman who called me, and we talked. I mean, he Facebooked me and sent me email messages and text messages, and he was hot to trot. Equalize the rate. And we talked, and I talked to him for almost about an hour. And we concluded the conversation with him saying that if he could get off work, he was planning on coming Monday night. And he was coming to speak against any tax rate. But after the conversation and me walking through all the positions, 6 months of conversations, interviews, deliberations with all of our department heads who have not asked for the moon and the stars and unicorns, rainbows. They have tempered and metered and throttled their request to be incremental. And instead he said he was going to come and speak in favor of it last night, of the 89 cents. So I wrestle with it. I think in the spirit of moving the conversation along, I too would be recognizing that an introduction, there is still an opportunity to evaluate other revenue streams. But in the spirit of moving the conversation forward, I will echo the sentiment of the Vice Mayor and share that I support the 89 cents.
What are our options on other revenue streams? Cigarette tax, we talked about that a little bit one day, but what about the meals and lodging taxes?
So the lowest hanging fruit would be your potential meals tax adjustment. Your current rate is 7%. I did a quick survey of folks around us, and that's kind of at the top of where folks are. I think the other one I found that was a little bit higher was maybe City of Richmond. I couldn't quote you the rate because I was just literally AI. What are meals tax rate? What are meals tax rate? Ms. Michelson did a good amount of research for us and what you could do in 24 hours, but not an exhaustive amount. So we'd want to run everything to ground because I think you said meals tax was mentioned in 3 different places in the code, and counties are restricted on how high they can go. We don't believe cities are, but we would want to proof that out. The other thing we would want to prove out is with your commissioner is can we move of integers of tenths, or would we have to go like 0.5, a full percent, things like that. But so your revenue's about $7 million, assuming that you don't cannibalize anything if you raise the tax rate on it. That's $1 million a percent, or $100,000 a tenth of percent. And sales tax is capped. I could do the same calc on lodging, but that's the biggest one and the quickest one to get to. I could run the same thought process on lodging. The cigarette tax isn't nearly as much revenue. The adjustment to that's probably not gonna. You're gonna have a hard time netting yourself even a penny on the adjustment to the cigarette tax.
I was gonna say, it's not much of a margin.
Right, but you could, there's not much margin on how high you can go up. I could run the same thought process though on lodging. It was just all I had time to run through was meals today.
So 1%, $1 million of revenue, cut the tax rate by 3 cents, gets us to 86 cents.
Yes. assuming that it doesn't.
I swear, when we
understand.
moved that tax rate to 7%, we moved it to the max allowable by the state. We had, I'm pretty sure, if I recall, when we moved the sales tax for meals and lodging, that we moved it to the extent we could.
Ms. Von Schilling was gonna run that to ground
Yeah, I
as
was
well.
gonna say, I was
and
pretty
would
sure.
trust-
But, I mean, that was how many years
Well,
ago,
we
so
don't
they
have-
may have changed that, but.
Still
We don't
agree
have
with
say-so
that.
over the sales.
Yeah,
It's,
we don't.
Yeah, I mean,
5% and
the
then we
meals,
receive our
that's
piece.
what's,
yeah, and that's, did the same high-level quick search, and found the same thing Ms. Michelson did.
I don't
I
think
could
that
find
there's
county mentioned,
any,
but not city.
restriction on city for a cap as far as meals, but Richmond is the highest at 7.5, but most places are like 5 and 6. Because, I mean, on the margin, once you keep raising the meals tax, it's gonna, it may bring in not necessarily a million, it may only bring 750 because people stop going out to eat. So there's that, sweet spot that City of Richmond's, people have a little bit more ability to have tourists and absorb that 7.5, that I'm worried that maybe Waynesboro, if we're already at 7.
I think Stanton's at 7, last I checked. So your neighbor's at 7. And again, that's where I kind of wanted to explore with Ms. Von Schilling is, could you do 7.3? Would that, I don't know if folks' computer systems can do that. So I wanted to make sure, I don't know if reform is, if the system is, amicable to that. So I wanted to run all of that kind of to ground, but just on order of magnitude, that's what it is, and I could do the same thought process through lodging. Lodging's a much smaller revenue source, but not insignificant. You could probably yield a little bit there, and then cigarette tax is even smaller than that.
And we couldn't increase the MIT tax without increasing personal property, because they have to be
The same.
the same.
One of the things that I wanted to, because you talked about what you heard last night, one of the things that I repeatedly heard, as we all did, about the effect that an increased real estate tax would have on seniors. And so during my subsequent meeting, I did inquire and was told that we did offer, based on age as well as income, we did offer a reduction for seniors. We currently offer that, but you have to come sign up for it. It's not something that's automatic to us. And so I, for one, didn't know that. I thought it was on our personal property tax. I knew that Augusta County offered that, but did not know that we offer that. And then apparently, based on the comments, a lot of people don't know that we offer that type of programming here in the city.
I think that's something that unfortunately is announced, at least my tenure on council, it's announced every year. And we emphasize that, especially for those.
In my conversations with Ms. Von Schilling, the people that have been applying over the years has actually been declining. So I don't know if it's a product of, I don't think it's a product of not enough eligible people. I don't know if it's a product of people don't know about it, or they feel like, oh, I don't take handouts, or I don't know what.
They find it intrusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to some senior groups several years ago about, what is that? Because, we've increased the benefit,
Yes.
right? We've increased the eligibility, but
applications.
our applications continue to decline. Yeah. I just feel like the driver of the $840,000, the driver of the $900,000 into $600,000 for the, I'm blanking off the C of the math, I got numbers rolling around in my head, for the high school, for this round, $900,000. That $900,000, that's 6 cents on the tax rate off the top that goes and to support it. And with another 5 cents next year, another 5.5, 6 cents the year after. So if y'all think we're gonna get to the police department and fire department by not making the leap, and I mean, we're not even in the middle of the road at 89 cents. So, you know, it is my bias or experience on council is that it is never a good time to raise taxes. There's always a reason not to. The double whammy of an assessment and a rate increase on top of that is not insignificant. But, you know, as I've told a couple people too, you can go back to the tapes and like, you know, several people, including myself, have said the bill's gonna come due, the medicine's gonna have to be taken, and here we are with a $60 million project in front of us, $2 million off the top, and a growing population that we need to serve. And I think at the end of the day, love it or hate it, my perspective on it is that we gotta make the right decision for 23,000 people. We gotta listen to every single person that tells us their circumstances, but I have made, my oath of office is to protect the health, safety, and public welfare of 23,000 people. And I think the bill has come due.
So my only challenge to that for the Community Vitality Fund, and when you have it, it's great. But what makes that more important than more firemen, right? So instead of doing 300,000 of Community Vitality, how many fire positions would that be? Right, so, and then, you know, if you have additional revenue at the end of the year, we could do an appropriation for, you know, money on a one-time basis when we have additional revenues, but to prioritize that over top of.
I would respectfully let's cut the $50,000 for the Children's Advocacy Center and put the money into the city of Waynesboro, specifically for the residents of the city of Waynesboro. I mean, we could argue that case. And I'd also say too, those that are on the margins and have the greatest need are likely gonna be those that are gonna need fire rescue, the fire department, and the police to come to their aid. So I say it's one and the same. These are tandem issues that cannot be separated from one another. We can't say, well, you know, how is that more important than the other? No, they're equal. And I'm a big advocate if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. But that's the reason we don't have 12 firefighters to consider this round, right? It's the reason we don't have 5 police officers to consider this round. You know, why jumping in, you know, you know, we could cut that down from $600,000 of salary position savings to eradicating it, right? Because again, I go back to the gentleman's comments last night. What's the crisis? Well, 35% vacancy in your public works department. Somebody's saying my streets aren't getting plowed, my garbage isn't getting picked up. Well, guess what? It's kind of hard to do when you hire 10 people and only 6 of them stick around at the end of the week. So, and the reason for that is because of compensation. That is the principal driver of it. So it is, the bill has come due, the medicine so I'm, again, I think that running all the other options to ground of what other revenue is in place, or might be available to offset, let's have that conversation. But if we don't do some of these things next year, if we don't do some of these things this year, then why is it a priority next year? When I know we're gonna have to, you know, if revenues stay flat, or God forbid decrease, at a minimum, we're gonna have to raise the real estate taxes by 5 cents next year. And then at a minimum, we're gonna have to raise it again another 5.5, 6 cents the following year. So, you know, standing up the positions, getting them ready, I don't get any thrill out of it. I mean, I'm a taxpayer too, right? And I wanna live in the most affordable community I possibly can live in, but by not harming the community that I live in. And I think that given the sheer demands of those organizations that are providing vital community services in our city, and the decreasing resources that they have compared to the increasing need, sitting here and not addressing that, I think I just think is as irresponsible as to not giving Chris an extra 2 deputy sheriffs. It's equally as important.
You're hardly ever gonna hear me say anything against trying to support our fire, our police, our deputies, our life-saving crew. 2 things, the Vitality Fund. Why, I mean, the thing that bothers me most about the Vitality Fund, and we touched some of this when me and you met, Terry, and I'll touch on it again, is the money that's just hanging out there right now. We have identified things that we want to support. Well, we do that through CAPSAW. You know, that's kind of, CAPSAW has the infrastructure in place. They have everything there. And we're the, you know, fiduciary manager for CAPSAW. So the things that we've already earmarked, that we talked about, the increase for the Children's Advocacy Center and a few others, if memory serves me correct, that was about 115,000 out of that 300,000. Does that sound right?
They're about, yeah.
Okay, so the rest of that 300,000 is just floating there for future projects. When we're talking about, I too took notes about people who are worried about their livelihood. I don't like the idea of leaving that money floating out there. So as the fiduciary manager, why don't we just take the money, that smaller amount, give it to CAPSAW, and they earmark it specifically for Waynesboro? And we cover those things that we know we want to help.
Well, and we can do that, and as I mentioned and talked to folks about, the first couple of years of the fund, again, rather than incurring debt for it, could be to set the funds aside as part of a capital project to acquire real estate in the vicinity of Lou DeWitt, where there's transit, multimodal access, sidewalks, trails, and most importantly, access to entry wage positions. Rather than getting excited about finding some vacant land in some of the poorest neighborhoods in our city and saying, hey, we fixed affordable housing by building more affordable housing in the most vulnerable parts of our community. I mean, I don't think that's something to celebrate. I think we need to diversify where we do that. So setting up a fund that accomplishes, it has a vision to facilitate meaningful affordable housing options. What we've heard in conversations with Waynesboro Housing Redevelopment and conversations I've had with DCHD is where the community can come to the table is through the availability of land and water sewer connections and the subsidy thereof. So that's one option. The second option is that we could take the $300,000 and send it to CAPSAW. Have them manage the $300,000 and specifically dictate that those funds only go to Waynesboro-centric organizations. Okay, that's cool too. Y'all want to do that? We can do that.
Because we've already identified, you know, not even 50% of it of the stuff they want to use for. And if we've identified it now, that means that's, you know, something we feel is a legitimate need. So if we, you know, that sending it through CAPSAW will be a much better deal because we'd have to pay somebody to manage those funds. And I'm not talking about hiring a new person. Even if we've got somebody on staff who does it, the time they take out is got a dollar value to it. So now you added more to it where they already have those things in place.
Yeah, well, and I think the mayor, you've had a conversation with CAPSAW, right? And her response was, I think, an enthusiastic yes. They would be glad to manage the $300,000. So that's an option for us.
I just don't know that I'm in favor of the whole 300,000 for it when we've only earmarked so much of it as we've designated as a need, the around 115,000 mark. So if that's the case, then we, you know.
Well, that's because we've
savings.
accepted that that's adequate. So I mean, I guess the question is that do you think $115,000 to support not-for-profits, not-for-profit services in our community is adequate?
115,000 is not just is not the only amount that we use to support nonprofits. Don't earmark it like that, or, you know, channel it like that. We do others. I mean, we support CAPSAW now. And when you talk about the Children's Advocacy Center, we support it more than any of the other two organizations anyway. And we use it the least, but we have designated, we know that's a need. We know that's something that's needed. So,
Well,
I mean, it's not like that, we're only given 115,000, that's dishonest, you know, or misleading. I mean, it's just, the fact is, you know, when these citizens come in here, the way they did last night, they expect us to account for every penny, not every $10,000.
I'll just throw this in there. You get 240,000 additional to the courts, but 300,000 for community development, additional, right? So you're 33% additional funding for those types of services, where the court's at 16%. You know, it's a balance of, if you are incentivizing or prioritizing what we're gonna approach, then, you know, the bare bones of what supports and makes our community safe would be priority, and things would fall in line where economic development, you know, I would rank that under the courts, the support to the courts. And it seems a little off kilter. And in all fairness, I put this forth, like, the people who are on the very low side that are eligible for assistance, right, could potentially apply for assistance, but there are people that are just outside of that window that this impacts. And the average of a 12% increase on the community is heavily focused on single-family households that seen increases of 20 to 25% on their property taxes for this assessment. So at 77 cents, they're paying 25 to 26% more than they paid last year. Now, I understand that for a lot of people, you know, that's not that big of a deal, but I've been in a position where that has been a big deal, and whether that's of my own doing through the year or just the circumstances of life, I'm not able to ignore that or the types of circumstances that people are in where that's important to them. So last night, we did have a lot of hard no's, but we had equally as many soft no's. There was an acknowledgement that services do need to be improved, that pay wages do need to be improved. But the significance of the size of the jump, and knowing that we're also staring down, that, you know, we bring up the 2.6 million, but we not putting forth that the idea is another 1.5 million next year and another 1.5 million the year after that, right? So that's another 10 cents, you know, just for that. Then you have another 12 cents or so for the high school, which is happening. I'll die on that hill all day, every day. That's happening.
No,
All
don't
right.
do it.
But I'm keenly aware of the growth that we have a positive outlook on our future with industry coming in. But when you're talking about swinging a sledgehammer this go around, and you're dropping, we gotta drop another one next year and another one after that, tempering volume of spending is, again, I'm keenly aware that I'm probably on the losing side of this argument, and I don't want anybody to feel that I don't understand where you're coming from, because I do, and, you know, I've had these conversations.
Yeah,
So, but, you know, I was raised in a household where we were on the lower side of a wealthier neighborhood, and we'll pay more taxes for more services. And, you know, houses are getting foreclosed. You know, and that was Baltimore City. That wasn't Waynesboro, for all clarity. But the significance of that doesn't impact me lightly, so I carry that with me. So, again, that's where I was with some of the stuff. Some of the numbers were a little bit different. I'm guessing that they're batched together differently in our pamphlet than they were on the spreadsheet last night. Because, like I said, I had 700,000 to emergency management, and then last night it was at 400 or 300. So I was kind of curious as
So
to.
I think the spreadsheet just showed the changes. So it was
Okay.
450 and change 700 total. And I think the community development has the new economic development agreements that are already coming on that have already been signed. I'd have to pull the detail on that, but that's the number you quoted is pretty close to what we're paying out for Waynesboro Place.
Yeah.
The estimate for what we're gonna have to pay next year, and then we had the
And
additional
just-
economic development. I think that was 95 maybe total, and it was 73 needed to balance to the 1.2. So that's like the 350 that you were kind of tossing
On a
around.
side note, I will say for potential revenues, I did discuss with, during the election cycle, I'd spoken with someone that was involved with emergency management in the Augusta County, Stanton, Waynesboro area, and they suggested like a per unit flat fee tax, that would be able to support expansion, like, $20 per unit annually would go to emergency management or would go to fire, and that would distribute, support services across the community. And a per unit base would kind of give you,
In Virginia, can you designate a
Yeah,
fire?
you can create both emergency services districts and fire districts, and then you have an assessment in those districts for EMS and fire services. It's sort of like the stormwater
yeah.
management fee. It's
But
the same.
that would distribute some of the burden to that more equally to the volume of as opposed to property value, because
And it'd
again,
be easier for the residents to understand, I would believe. When they see
Just
exactly
float
what dollar
that
amount
idea.
goes to what.
It's an area that a lot of localities right now are looking at and moving
Yeah.
forward to.
Yeah, I can see that as an easier way to explain to folks.
Is it like
where
the
your
blighted
money's
property
going.
ordinance?
No,
It's
it's
not
just,
like
it's
divided, okay.
just a specific district you can designate to, like I said, you create, I'm just gonna use it for an easy example, you create the 4 wards as each have a district, and you assess what, based on either population or use of those type of services historically, and what those costs are, you.
So the rates would be different, could be
It could be,
different
it
in
could
each,
be,
yeah,
depending
Based on usage?
based on, value.
the cost of,
House
like say there's
housing,
more
yeah.
people, so there's more there's more fire engines in that district, or there's more, whatever. It could be depending on, or it could be everybody's the same. It just depends on, you guys have a lot of opportunity to explore and designate, the districts, the costs, the charges, the assessment. But it has to be based on, what, it's sort of like I said, the stormwater, it has to be designated for those services only.
yeah, and like I said, that would give us the ability to contribute to those funds and to grow those funds. And it would be more balanced per population as opposed to significantly. It's not necessarily on the value of your home as it is.
No, it's on the
Exactly.
costs of the services.
So,
It's an interesting idea.
It is. I'd like to know more about that
I would too.
before we go down that rabbit hole.
We looked at it for another locality. I'll pull the information that we have and I can send it to you guys.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be nice, thank you.
So staff has went from 89 to 85 and provided this council with what that would look like. And so we've had discussion. What I haven't heard is from the group other than Terry and Lori. I haven't heard from you guys on the 85, but do you have a rate that you want to discuss in this forum?
I mean, I'll be honest, equalization was out off the table, and I'm gonna take heat for that, but I'm aware that the 3 cents for the high school stepping in, knowing that we'll be able to allocate those funds for architecture and engineering. And then some basic, things that we're gonna need, like 77 cents And then I came up with a number, instead of an $8 million increase, capping it at $5 million increase in spending, which would get it to about 81 cents. And that would take a lot of figuring and working. But again, that 81 cents is 81 cents 2026, 2028. We're $1 not doing anything. You know what I mean? You know, by the time we figure in school funding, which we're gonna address the guardrails, but that's even if we institute guardrails, it's gonna go up. And then the 12 cents for the high school, or 13 cents roundabouts, but with growth, you figured 12 cents or less, but I anticipate that growth's gonna be allocated to other things, you know. If we, $1.5 million worth of growth outside of the property tax rate this year in our sales tax, local revenue, state revenue increases about 1.4. That would basically, our anticipated growth would cover the pay that we anticipated over the next 2 years. And I'm aware that I have a snowball's chance and you know where that number coming to fruition, but I would be negligent not to at least, you know, speak where I'm at and put it out there.
And that number being 81 cents.
81 cents.
81 cents.
That's you too.
And I'm not certain that, and I'm not gonna do math, I'm not even going to attempt to do math. Does 81 cents address the needs as far as staffing and public safety? Does 81 cents address what we all agreed that we felt was a need for the city? Does it address the 2 sheriffs that we agreed to? Does it address the 2 police officers we agreed to? Does it address the 6 firefighters that we agreed to? Does that 81 cents include that?
So that's where some numbers crunching, and I was hoping to get some numbers. So
Well, I mean,
For-
we
for-
have to be
for-
prepared to say that.
So we are throwing everything at the wall right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're behind on staffing, we're having a problem with retention. So we're taking a big swing on the fundings on the pay side of it. We've operated with a 30% vacancy rate. Would it be prudent to, if we're gonna take a big swing at the pay, to temporarily freeze some of the positions to see if they increase, and that the unfilled positions that we haven't had, so we wouldn't be losing anything, we would just be hamstringing ourselves from gaining more, but to see if that improves our retention and also whether that increases our application of skilled labor. Right, so if you're 30%, you could almost eat half of that pay increase on 30. I mean, I'm figuring $1.5 million on.
Yeah, I want to.
That's where my mind was going, right? So
Okay.
when stuff's not working at the shop and stuff's not got, you just change one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't know what the net gain was, whether it was, you know, what change you made the most improvements. So that was a thought process I had.
So we make the employee compensation the need for this budget cycle to bring down the rate to 81 cents. To see if we're going to realize
Retention.
not only retention, yes, but fill those vacancies that exist in Public Works.
You would
We
need,
will address an initial concern, and that's filling vacancies currently. We will not address staffing levels where they sit down. We're not freezing any positions because we don't have any frozen.
well, no, because we have unfilled positions, and the unfilled positions are budgeted for.
Well, I have unfilled positions in Public Works. I do not have
Yes.
unfilled positions.
Well, that's what it was.
Fire and-
No, yeah, that's, but what I'm getting at is if, with the revenue that would be available,
Uh-huh.
with some frozen positions would then be able to be applied to the pay raises of the 2.6 that would, and then we would be able to see whether that helped in retention and application of more skilled positions. Because one of the problems that we're having, I'm guessing, is that our skilled labor gets skilled and then they go elsewhere for more money. So,
Conversation we had.
it's just kind of, and again, I'm keenly aware of the timing of this and the thought process, but,
Okay. I am understanding what you're saying. I don't understand that we would not do what we have said that we wanted to do, and we said that it was a need to do, and that is, create those positions.
no, that would, I'm not saying don't create the positions for the police, the fire, or the sheriff's office. That's not what I'm saying.
Public Works.
What I'm saying is that if you froze some of the unfilled positions that are budgeted for,
Okay.
right,
And the
then
Public
we would
Works,
have, we
okay.
would have available revenue
The money that is already budgeted for those positions.
Yeah,
that would then,
Flip that
that
over
would be
into-
available for the 2.6, and then see if that actually improves retention, or whether people just don't like doing the work anymore, right? Because you can throw a whole lot of money at positions and still not get people to come at it. And that's not saying that we don't still need the pay raises. The point is to change one thing at a time, to make a big swing on the pay rate.
So one of the things that me and Cameron talked about was some of those positions with that living wage increase brings people up to, what was it, 1964, something in that neighborhood, 19 something an hour?
I think the first iteration had like 4 people just slightly below the living wage, which I
Yeah.
think was 1941.
that's
And
the
I think
whole,
it ended
is that
up-
the
That's over the
whole
3
thing,
years.
or is that's over the 3 years to get to
No,
that
sir,
point?
that's, with the 2.6. I did not rerun the calc on what 2 million looks like, because candidly didn't have time
But either
to
way, they can,
work all the way through it.
for those positions that were 19 something an hour, they can go down to Mathers or some of the other private places and start at 24 an hour.
Okay,
You know,
so,
we're wanting to see if those unfilled positions is because of we don't pay enough, or, you know, they just go other places.
but we won't realize that because we won't have those funds to fill them, will we? If we're not going to,
That's why you would freeze those positions to see.
what am I seeing though? Maybe I'm missing something in translation here. What am I seeing in terms of where are they gonna come to when there's nothing there? Because
We've already
we
saw
have,
that they've not come here because we've got those vacant
We've
positions.
been operating without,
Yeah,
is what I'm getting at.
okay, so I'm gonna increase compensation, okay, for what I have currently. I'm not going to fill those current vacancies and use those funds that we see from those vacancies to support the additional staffing needed in public safety. So compensation goes up, which is a good thing for our city employees. But I can't now fill those positions because there's no money
Which
to fill
position?
those vacancies, because we're using those salaries from those vacancies, we're using them to staff.
Well, no, we
The
would be
public
using
safety
that
positions.
funding to pay the people who've been doing the work anyway.
Which,
Which I guess that accepts that the current state of affairs is working just fine.
Temporarily, because retention is the issue, is.
But what's
we-
temporarily in your mind?
In my mind,
6
tempor-
months, 9 months, 12 months?
A year, and then if we have application of skilled labor because we have better pay, then we can soft load on more positions.
So let's just pick public works. I think I'm there where you're at, is, assuming we still have a 35%, as a few months ago. So we have a 35% vacancy in public works. We freeze those positions.
Not all of them, but a select number of them to soften the number. You do all of them, it would,
Well, I mean, without, like I said at the beginning, I mean, 69 cents plus 6 to 8 cents, you're almost up to a dime anyway, and plus the debt service, you're basically at a dime. So we're almost at your 81 cents without doing anything. We're
But we also haven't done anything to try to create revenue from what we've already been getting. We're just assuming that, again, none of this, everything that's on additional in this budget is extra, right? Above what we've had. We agreed that, okay, there are things that we need to do. And again, I'm sensitive to the fact that there's a lot of people put a lot of time into it. But, you know, just kicking it under and saying, well, you know, at 8 cents, well, where have we created revenue from within? Again, we're operating 30%, or 30% unstaffed in public works, right? So there's all this budgeted revenue, and we're having trouble retaining people because the pay's not good enough. Take some of that revenue that you have for 30 unfilled positions that we've been forced to operate under and see if we can't retain some of the skilled labor, because part of the reason that some of the services suffer is because when you lose a skilled person and they go somewhere else, you just don't get the quality of work. And it's not to say that you won't eventually get the quality of work, they just don't have the experience, you know, to give you what the person with experience can't. So improving the pay rate is significant, but a lot of that money is already available in unfilled positions where we could address that.
So you think that by doing that, then we'll generate revenue in the future that will fund those positions?
Well, that was one of
as
the things a
we-
lot of the folks said last night with all the new business and development going on here. That will give us time to see how much the more that's gonna generate also.
And say, for example, you froze 20 of the 30 positions. Well, we'd be able to see whether you fill 10 of them, right, in a year, but you have 20 positions worth of revenue to increase the pay of the people in the city that have been providing the services anyway.
who may hate their job
Yeah.
because they gotta work double shifts, because there's not enough people.
I mean,
mean-
we'd have to look at the numbers, right? To see if that's actually a thing.
But, you know, likewise, I mean, once the residential comes online and, God have mercy over that Texas Roadhouse, man, they do the business, right? So between the two of them, we may be able to cut the rate 89 cents, you know, if we went with 89 cents, cut the rate next year. I mean, I think it's one of those things of, it's a balance between, that, the optimism of what will come online, but if I just use this year as an example, assume what happened this year, happens next year, which I hope is not the case, but let's, you know, health insurance ain't gonna get any cheaper. You're already gonna go up, you know, slide up the scale, anywhere. I guess I have confidence that if we could do without the positions in public works, a matter of the people, you know, garbage not getting picked up, plows and streets not being plowed, if we could go without it, I doubt Mike would have those positions in the organization overall.
How would you propose you go about identifying those 20, 30 positions to freeze?
So if I might, I don't foresee this being, with all due
Yeah,
respect.
no, I'm aware. I'm fully aware.
You've got a couple challenges. Those vacancies are spread across 4 or 5 different funds, and you don't have the volume of employee to, you could do a micro sort of study in one of the funds, but it doesn't help you across your whole budget. And a lot of those employees live in the enterprise funds. And so we're talking about
Okay.
a rate in the general fund. And so, you know, to your credit, well, I think we did that one year in the police department where we were carrying about 8 or 10 vacancies, and we felt like we were in a crisis position. And so we froze a couple positions, or more, four positions
Yes,
for
sir.
2 years,
Yes, sir.
and shifted that money over to try to do exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. But that was easier because it is a more finite and well-defined department. Here, your challenge is you're across 4 or 5 different funds, and you don't have the same volume of compensation, to be honest. So I get you in concept, what you recommend might be more applicable on a departmental basis rather than a multi-fund basis. Do you have that number for me?
Oh, sorry, working on it. Sorry. I need my calculator. You keep talking.
I do, if I could just, I remembered I had a spreadsheet. So just to circle back again on, the support that we offer not-for-profits. In 2023, we provided $855,245 to not-for-profits. In 2024 rather, $888,536. In 2025, $1,027,945. Now those are all of our community service organizations. If you were to partition just last year, just services that support, so CAPSAW, Project Grows, Children's Advocacy Center, Valley Program for Aging Services, the Waynesboro Boys and Girls Club, that's $135,000. So what I'm saying with going back to Community Vitality Fund, you could engross that $135,000, bring that into the fund, and then that frees up $135,000 in the general fund to go spend on something else. And then your new net revenue is $165,000 of new revenue. And again, assuming that rate, you hold on the penny for the people year after year in perpetuity, that rate will increase in value over time. And then you'll eventually be able to expand services. I also heard last night that, the River City Breadbasket serves 600 residents. 600 residents who are counting on it for food services. I also read in the paper here recently that with the federal cuts, the Blue Ridge Food Bank is going to have a shortfall. Well, guess where most of the fresh produce comes from to support the facility that serves 600 residents in our city? It comes from the Blue Ridge Food Bank. And so, again, I think the evidence is clear. We have the 2026 funded requested amount, and I haven't done the math on my spreadsheet here about what's included in Mike's original budget. $1.8 million, an increase of $800,000 in ask from not-for-profits who are seeing their need to provide services, critical services to our community, growing exponentially. So a $300,000 increase, which actually converts to a $165,000 increase because we would absorb the CSA children and food insecurity priorities in the community. It's a $165,000 net increase in those specific services. You compartmentalize it into one dedicated fund that runs in perpetuity until a council kills it, and then that frees up $135,000 in this budget that is otherwise being absorbed through the general fund.
Makes sense?
I understand. It doesn't make sense to me, but I understand it. And why I say it doesn't make sense to me is I still fall on this sword. We have projected revenue, and then we have, Lord help, above projected revenue. And if we were going to commit to something like that, I think the responsible thing for a taxpayer would be to commit above projected revenue to those types of services instead of taxing them specifically for that. We already do that to a degree, but
So if you
again,
have the revenue, then you use it.
if you have additional revenue,
Tax.
okay, we can, if I work a little overtime,
We
I
could say
can
the same
buy a
thing
parachute.
for the rescue squad. It's a not-for-profit that has a busted operating budget, and we're coming to the rescue because they deliver a service that if we absorbed that rate, if we absorbed them into our municipal operations, it would take our $400,000 contribution and balloon it to $2 million annually and grow. So if we don't do it, the need still grows, and well, I've interest in time.
Yeah, well, but I understand,
Yeah.
but.
And I understand
Yeah.
your
It's-
point, too, Jeremy.
it's-
Again,
we're-
I
we're
don't
gonna-
think
we're
you're
gonna-
out of it all.
So
If
so
we're
the,
potentially looking at increasing the need for your penny for the people, because more people are gonna be asking the food bank for food, if,
Because you're taking a
if, you
penny
know,
from the people.
sarcastically speaking. But yeah, no, I know it's important, right, and I don't disagree, I'm fond of the idea
Yeah,
on
we
those
do all
types of
understand,
services.
just for our own edification, we understand what a progressive tax rate is, right? Because that's the
Yeah,
universe
okay,
we're
so I
living
had
in.
this discussion.
So someone that owns $1 million house disproportionately pays more
But
of the
that's not a
penny to the
progressive
people.
tax rate.
That is a progressive tax
It's
rate.
not, it's the same rate. They're paying the same rate, that's not a progressive tax rate.
It's a progressive revenue stream based off the tax rate.
Yeah, but that's not truly progressive.
If it's $1 million home, they are going to pay disproportionately more than those that own a home at $150,000.
Not disproportionately more. They're paying the exact same amount more,
They're paying
percentage wise, so it's not.
and a regressive tax would be a water sewer bill, where a family of four that lives in $1 million home pays the same
Same
water
amount.
sewer as a family of four living in a $150,000 home, right? A regressive system like that, I wouldn't even be talking about a community vitality fund. But having those that have more means going to support those that have less means is a progressive taxing structure, and that's the basis for it.
let me ask you a question. The 81 that you propose, now understanding what staff has said about the public works positions, how would you get there now?
With a whole lot smaller percentages. I mean, I would scale percentages back. I mean,
On certain funds?
on everything, I would look at everything and scale it back. If we can't find money within the budget that we had previously, $5 million more revenue year over year, knowing that next year is gonna be another $4 million, and next year after that, it's gonna be another $4 million. It's not a short-sighted one-time look at it, so it's trying to narrow it down and see the benefits and then direct our growth next year. And like I said, I'm keenly aware that I'm new to this. I haven't had the same struggles that some people have experienced, so on council, with these discussions. So, you know, personally, you know, I'm aware that whatever tax rate comes, I'm gonna pay it. I live in Waynesboro. I utilize, my kids go to school, like I utilize the city. They go to the parks, they do everything. So it's not that I don't understand it, but I do understand the impact that significant increases have. And this is not if we were saying 89 cents and we're not even talking about it next year, that's an easier pill to, and that's not an easier pill to swallow, but it would be an easier thing to defend. But I know that we're gonna have big swings the next couple of years. So, like, again, $8 million more in spending year over year is a lot. And percentage wise, again, you know, that 12%, you know, average rate, you know, people are looking at 26%, you know, that's a big jump. Plus the 12 cents on top of that would be significant. And again, I'm looking down 3-4 years down the road, and we're not shying away from $1.10 at 3 or 4 years down the road at this projection.
Okay, and I'm not, again, show me how you get to 81. I'm not against 81, but does it provide the services that we require as a city at 81 cents? I understand and agree with you that
It provides better services, and it would provide better services and more significant increases than what we had over last year. Otherwise, what are we spending the money on? It's just how big of a swing do we want to take? and that, $5 million in additional spending is over 50% of the projected spending at 89 cents.
And what's sort of like if you defer all the positions that we've talked about? If we let's just, because I mean, that's the
I mean,
basis
the
there.
positions wouldn't create 2 cents. Right? We've got like $600,000 worth of positions.
But
So
I'm
it's
saying,
not-
but I'm saying, if we pull the positions back, and we'll dig in deeper, pull the compensation back at $2.6 million. If you do that, and we say, listen, we've already got these other kind of costs that are coming up on us, and we're just gonna pull back, on that. And we'll reapproach it next year and see what we can do next year. Next year, we go from a 3-cent tax rate increase for the school to a 5-cent tax rate increase for the school. How is this conversation gonna be any different next year?
There's no assessment next year.
There's no assessment next year.
So whatever raise is gonna be a raise over the previous year. Again, the people that have 20 to 26% increase, you're talking about 30 to 40% increase at 89. Right? Next year, a 5% increase, or a 5-cent increase, or a 6-cent increase is a 6-cent increase.
Right.
Right? It is what it is, and we're
Well, and
looking
that's
at.
what, that's what happens when we, swing, I guess, do big swings, and then when there are years where councils take no swing, right? Or they go back and sit in the dugout. And so, I look back at my time on council, and I can remember equalizing or a penny or two on the rate. And you wonder, like, had that not happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation tonight.
I think we need to do what we can while we can. I mean, promises. But we gonna do it
No,
next
no,
year. No,
promise.
we not. No, we not. We're gonna have these same conversations.
Absolutely.
The same conversations because it's not comfortable. We don't wanna have our money. This is human nature. We wanna spend our money on taxes. We don't. But it's needed. I mean, I think it's been said before, we're catching up. We are catching up. We are catching up, and it's a hard position to be in. I mean, we have constituents that we need to face out there and, feel the heat or whatever. Some of us, can't stand the heat, and some of us don't really care about the heat because that's not the important thing. You gotta make the decision. We gotta make the decision. And this is part of it.
Now, I gotta make the decisions for the residents that are here now. And I know that maybe the demographics of the residents that we're used to being around may be different in the different wards. I don't know. But I know that the people that are impacted the most frequently, are the people that are just on the fringe of when you get a mortgage for a house, you buy the house you can afford, and they tell you what you can afford, and you go, you're pushing the max of what you can afford because that's what the market is right now. Every dollar matters, and like I said, it's a big swing.
Yeah, I'm not saying that not
Yeah,
every dollar
and it's
matters.
not- there's
It all matters. It all matters. But we have to pay the piper. We done danced to the music. We done got hot, sweaty, funky. No, I'm talking. We got hot, sweaty, funky, dancing to the music for cheap or not paying what we need to pay. And now we gotta pay. We gotta pay. And it hurts. But we gotta do it. We gotta do it. We gotta do it. And let's just put it right here. Is 81 cents really realistic?
81
81
cents is 81 cents in 2026. In 2027, it's 90. In 2028, it's over $1. Like I'm not short-sighted on this.
Yeah.
So I'm looking. I'm fine. I'm comfortable. I'm not worried about me.
It's not about comfort. It's not about our
I'm
own
worried.
individual
I'm worried
comfort
about people
levels.
that I know that are maybe they're on a fixed income and they're looking maybe.
And we're
like-
not.
We are. I understand that, but Like, I understand what you're saying completely. I
Well,
get it.
but what we're trying to say is, what we're saying is that this is an adversarial, and this is not adversarial. I'm saying that we gotta take the medicine. I'm saying that I definitely realize that people are hurting and they may not have the resources to pay what needs to be paid comfortably or whatever, but that still does not take away from the fact that our city has needs and we must move forward with the needs. Despite that, this is about the greater good. This is about the greater good. And it's not some stance for our political people that are out there that want to see that, you know, we stood our ground and we're not going to go past a certain point. This is about the reality of it.
Well, Jim, that's not accurate.
No, this
You know,
year,
that's
it's not, that is accurate, because I'm sitting here, I kept score last night like everybody else. And there was people who had varying opinions, but it was overall, 21 of the 26 people that were in here wanted us to do what was right with the tax rate and keep it lower.
That's, to characterize it, what's right.
What do you want to cut? What do you want to cut?
You know,
It's
I
very-
look back at things, and like I said, I don't want to do anything with, you know, the police, the fire, and all that. I want to support them as much as we possibly can. But when I was looking up all this stuff, you know, we had a conversation a few years ago, the year before me and Kenny were on council, when you all approved the new fire station, which was asked for by the people. It was long overdue. And the fire chief comes in here and says, we don't need any more firemen. He said, we didn't need any. We've got a satellite station, we've got the manpower we need, that we don't need any more firemen. Then last year, they came in here and wanted to apply for a grant to get 9 firemen. And I asked the question then, okay, so you're awarded the grant for the 9 firemen, you know, what happens the year after that? Who pays the salary of that fireman? Where do we get the money from for that if you get the grant? Does that guarantee you're gonna pay for them in perpetuity? No. They applied for the grant, they didn't get it, and then this year, it's all of a sudden, we need 9 firemen. The population and all hasn't grown enough to the point to warrant the 9 firemen, when 2 years ago, they didn't need any.
So let's look at,
That's based on what the standards are. I
And that was
went
the
and met
standards
with the
2
fire,
years
I
ago.
went and met with the fire chief
That was
myself.
2
and
years ago,
his
so you
requests
can't
are
tell me
based on what the standards are basically. And his current standards, his current staffing does not meet standards. And even with the
It
addition
met
of
the
the
standards
6
2 years ago.
even with the addition of the 6 firefighters, he still is not meeting the standards, basically. He still is not meeting, he's under the national standards of what it is that is said that he needs to have, basically. And that is why he could not get the grant, because the grant didn't see, basically, that he would be able to meet the standards or whatever the whole,
so far off the mark.
yeah, and so it's like, okay, well, we're not gonna give you this grant money.
yeah, well, so, okay. The SAFER grant would have, just to be clear, the SAFER grant would have given us, I think, 3 years to adjust and to take on those salaries, had it been awarded. So, just wanted to make sure that was explained. My concern is that, yeah, we're not going to, and I think we all agree, because if you look at the standards that the chief is using, we can't support that. And we can't, and I think we all
And he
agree
knows
to
that
that.
too.
And so I think that the number that he came in with was what he felt would be reasonable to provide, again, a adequate level of service
Yeah, and I'm
to a
not trying to throw
growing
the chief,
community.
don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to throw the chief under the bus or
Right.
anything. What I'm looking at
Bus didn't
is,
rolled over him.
what?
I said the bus rolled over him.
No, that's not it. What I'm looking at is, we know we've got these increases over the next couple of years that we're gonna have to absorb. There's no way around it. So we
Yes.
gotta find a better way to ease our way into those and absorb those a little bit more
Right,
evenly.
so this budget calls for 6 firefighters, okay? Why don't we address it at 3 for this budget cycle, and then look at the next cycle and say, well, based on what happens in the next budget cycle, can we address three
Three
more?
more, yeah.
Does it call for 6
So
or did it
that-
call for
that-
9
that-
initially?
It called
That
for
would
9
help to
initially.
address,
And so
we're
this
still
is
going to address
3 on January
staffing,
1,
but
3 on
maybe we
January
can't
1.
address staffing at the level that we would want to, based on the high school debt, based on some other debt that's going to throw our rate, and based on the increased assessment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm trying to do is get at a number that we can agree on, and then work forward from there. That's not to say if 85 cents was the number, that's not to say that there's still a little research that Cameron could do to address that, and maybe it would come down to 84 or 83. But we have to get somewhere with a number, okay? If changing from 6 to 3, yeah. Let's do that. That gives us a little bit more wiggle room to address what we need to do tonight.
Only a little, because
Not much, you're
yeah,
right.
because
Not much.
those other 3 didn't come online till January.
Not much, so that's where I'm at.
And
81, I'm not convinced that 81 is gonna get us anything other than, the high school debt, and maybe Nature's Crossing, the debt on that and some other things. It is not, and staff correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe that 81 is going to address any staffing for public safety. And I think that we as a council do a disservice if we don't address that.
And then what about the common man or the woman? Because again, yes, public safety is important, but we have public works staff that they're short staff or whatever. Are we talking about like not funding for them or what?
No, I personally entertain in my own mind, another 5% raise, which would be 1.5, I think, or something to that nature, and not do the full 2.6 or the 2 million that was presented here. We would just do the 5%. And while it's not ideal, it keeps us moving in a positive direction. Okay.
So I guess if we did that, I mean, and I appreciated the pie chart, right? So the pie chart is so 40 of the 2.6. It's not all 2.6 million, but thereabout. So let's just round
I think the
numbers.
pie chart's all the funds, just to be, the 2.6 million is just the general fund, the pie chart shows.
All funds,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So the enterprise funds as well. So Public Works would get 34% of the of the additional supplemental compensation. Public Safety would get 43%. General Administration would get 11, which again is across all fund types. Parks and Rec, 7%, Community Development, 3%, and Judicial, 2%. So, so long as we, held tight, I mean, I'm flexible on that too. Recognizing as well that, while it's not an assessment year next year, with a 5% tax rate increase off the top, is gonna feel like it anyway. So, and whatever we don't fund this year in terms of compensation, we're gonna come right back around and do again next year. I'm be honest with you, am I disagreeable that we're on a trajectory to get us to $1 over the next several years? I'm seeing that too, but I'm also seeing that the average city is $1.06. So, and comparative cities are 96, 98. So, don't get any thrill out of it. So, it's really a matter of, for me, simple is, it's 6 months of conversation. We talked about 6 firefighters, 2 police officers, 2 sheriff deputies, the high school, community development, community not-for-profit support, employee raises, and Waynesboro first aid financial support. Those are the drivers of 89 cents. So what are the things that we don't want to do?
Exactly.
$8 million in additional spending. I mean, that's, well, I wanna cap it at 5, like, and that's,
So what are
It's
the, what are the
boiling
things
water.
we're gonna cut?
we're not cutting anything. What are the things we're gonna reduce?
What reduce cut?
Not cutting, what are we gonna reduce? And it's a little bit of everything.
How do we get there, Jeremy? We gotta get there. I mean, I hear you.
I mean, I can get us
But-
below
but-
69 cents.
No, so,
Yeah, I mean, I can get us below 69 cents and
I just
I
wanna
could,
get there.
and people will
That's all.
not love it. But, I mean, it is possible to get below 69 cents.
I mean, it's
The Short
not-
family has eaten beans before, and there is a way to do it. But it's what kind of community do you wanna live
well, and
in?
that's why this is, believe it or not, I feel like a more cordial conversation than in past, because nobody up here sat here and said 69 cents,
Right.
right? I mean, it's an understanding that,
And I appreciate that. I'll tell you how 81 cents feels to me. So my feelings, I'll just lay on a couch. 81 cents feels to me, it's 2 cents above what, 3 cents above what, the current rate is, right?
It's 4
4
cents.
cents, 4 cents above the current rate.
Come on, Terry.
I'm getting my math, I'm telling y'all, I've been up for a while. So, so 4 cents. We're at 4 cents, what it feels like is acknowledging that, without blinking an eye, we're almost at a dime for all the new expenses and indebtedness that we're gonna have to account for. Just to repeat myself, it's about a dime. So what it sounds like is after 6 months of conversation and spending a lot of time talking to every department head, every police chief, every fire chief in the whole city of Waynesboro over 6 months, that it didn't matter. Because it's 4 cents. We're willing to consider 4 cents of difference after 6 months.
you're looking
And-
at it as 4 cents, and I'm looking at it as 26% plus 4 cents.
I know,
Like that-
I know,
that's
but
the way-
there's so much sunk cost off the top.
I mean,
That there's nothing that we can do to change that. Assessment, no assessment. There's a sunk cost. That's,
I
it's just,
understand.
I mean,
I mean, but that's.
like we said, man, we've
Yeah.
many times, I mean, it sucks. It's an awful, it's
I
not a
don't-
good position to be in, but
I don't wanna put staff in a position that, but I really need to know, at a proposed 81, do we lose the public safety positions? Is that fair to ask, or is that unfair to ask? If it is, I'll retract, but I'm trying to understand.
Would you need more time to
I think
calculate?
if you wanted to see an 81-cent budget, I'd have to spend some time on, if you want a staff recommended 81-cent budget, I'd have to spend some time on that.
you could push, all the positions out into Q3 of the fiscal year.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, but,
But the piper's gonna get paid
Yeah,
one the other way
yeah.
there, I mean.
yeah.
But it would stagger it, I mean, I think to Jeremy's point to lessen, the impact, is that do you, and I loathe the mid-year pay raises, right? Cause I think
Yes.
cause what we're dealing with this year, $500,000,
Yes,
because that was the decision last year.
I agree.
So we got $500,000 of sunk costs this year because of that. And, but that's a way to do it. Like if you wanna get the momentum,
Yeah,
pull back the rate a little bit, because you're not gonna absorb all the cost. I mean, I'm cool with considering that too. I don't love it, particularly with the fact that I know, to Jeremy's point, I got 5 cents next year.
And that's pretty much gonna, if we do as good, it's gonna be eaten up by our projected growth and other revenue outside of property tax, so we're still gonna have to address it.
an introduction at 85 cents does not mean it will stay at 85 cents, is that correct?
That's correct.
But you can't go higher.
You can't.
Can't go higher. But we can definitely, that would definitely give staff time to, do some additional research. Was meals and sales off the table? Is that off the table?
No, I think we're gonna look at that.
So would that give them also time to look at that as well?
And come back off
And
89.
so we could do that.
I think we owe it to the taxpayers to give them the time to look at it and see what our options are.
Okay, so can we somewhat
Yeah,
agree?
I'll make a motion. Are you looking for a motion, Mr. Mayor?
Not yet. Not yet. I don't feel that, 89 is where we wanna start. I feel 85 is where we wanna start. We introduce 85, we give staff time to work through 85, and we go from there.
Mayor,
Is it,
And-
can I say
I
that?
mean, maybe I'm out of place, since I'm just the attorney and not staff or, an elected official. But just from a legal standpoint of 85, and it can't go any higher, if we factor in other resources such as the meals tax or, other tax revenue, it doesn't give you the opportunity to exchange a higher meal tax rate, and then that would, potentially
You got
change.
2 cents on a meal tax, and then you could get 6 cents out of it instead of 3, then.
So I'm
I see.
just throwing it out there for conversation or thought process. I know it's getting late, but if you started at 86, is that a better position to be in rather than the 85? Because you can't go up. Because I know you guys talked about 86 earlier, so I just wanted to,
And that's where I'm
Circle
at
back to that.
89, is because at 89, we keep the number crunching going. We have
Exactly.
the spreadsheets working.
Why would we go lower when we don't
And-
know?
and- and-
There's a big question mark.
I don't have a problem with that, me personally. I don't have a problem with introducing 89, understanding that, I'm not comfortable with a final rate of 89. And so we would need to work very hard at, getting that to a rate that would be acceptable to our citizens, all of our citizens.
well, it would put us on.
Well, that's not possible.
So.
You're not gonna get a rate that's
We're not
acceptable
gonna make
to
everybody
all.
happy,
Nah.
I understand.
Okay.
That's where
So, come on
what I
now.
was saying earlier, is that I absolutely value, and I'm totally sincere, every single person that comes up and says whether or not, I trust their research or not. But at the end of the day, the oath is the health, safety, public welfare of 23,000 people. It's not how many people got to the podium last night, or how many emails I got, or how many phone calls I received. It's looking out for the health, safety, public welfare of 23,000 people. And that's where I'm like, at 89, I'm right there too, is like, whatever we can get down, however we wanna slice and dice. If there was an interest to do mid-year stuff, Q3 stuff, like, let's get real creative and do it. The bill's gonna come due next July, but if it, maybe having to soften the blow a little bit as it,
Well, and give chance to realize some growth. So as
Yeah.
we discussed with staff earlier in the week, that, we do have projected growth and we have sustained growth over the next few years with the developments that are being developed right now. So each year, we're going to have additional revenue as a basis. So when we stagger it, we get a chance to see what that's gonna be. The apartment complex is over by Target, it should be significant revenue. The houses, we're gonna have
Yeah.
a continuous, easily projected kind of, Cameron, you kind of project how many, new homes will be, completed yearly on average.
Just because, I looked it up this morning, what did I show you?
It was 350,
350
wasn't it?
was what last year's, because it looks like so much dirt moving, but then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just prep,
350,
Which
I
is
think is,
$27 million worth of new construction.
right,
Yeah.
because you only get a
Factored in, right?
percentage of the,
Yeah.
divided
But,
by 100 and times it by your rate, and that's the,
But I would expect that in the newer developments off of Hopeman, where they've done the heavy infrastructure work now on the front side, that we might see, probably we will see in that, but potentially some, accelerated growth because the infrastructure's been put in place. But just, it gives us time to realize some of those gains and to be able to apply them.
I could totally get behind that. What I don't wanna sacrifice, to be candid, is I don't wanna sacrifice one daggone thing that we talked about for 6 months. There's too much thought, effort gone into the daggone thing, and too much wasted time, like, of talking to people. But throttling it to see what future revenue looks like, now, go on record, the bill's gonna come due next July. And we'll have to wrestle with that then, but at least I would be totally inclined to like throttle this thing out to half year, quarter 3, whatever we have to do to phase this in. And then, when we go back and we look at Cameron's workflow for what do we do in 27, what do we do in 28, maybe we don't do in 27, maybe in 28. Maybe we go and say, whew, that was rough. Let's just put all our energy in the school, right? But getting more cops on the street, getting more firefighters.
The firefighters is the most impactful move we're making. The two officers, the one officer that's gonna be the non-commissioned is gonna be the fleet manager.
Right.
I mean, from a citizen standpoint, from the police officer, from the police department standpoint, it's gonna help, but you're not gonna feel those officers. You're not gonna feel the difference in the city. They'll operate smoother, but you ask yourself, your investment in your.
What about the sheriff?
Nobody's arguing with the sheriff.
Yeah, I mean, as far as impact.
But in terms of
That,
impact, yeah,
so the sheriff said he could use 5, right? So we projected 2, and we're gonna, be able to see the impact that those 2 make, and address it. I mean, that's
Just
2
more into the future.
Yeah.
That's 2 full-time positions in 30 years or 40 years.
right, yeah.
So,
we said it last time.
Since 1976. I was 9 years old in 1976.
So
Lord,
I'd like to introduce it at 86 and we work our way from there.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'd like to introduce it at 86 and we work our way from there.
I think, to be respectful, and I know you have a motion on the table, I would just offer that, at 86, I believe it extinguishes the possibilities and the additional work that can go on and what accommodations can be made. I'm not disagreeable that it could be 86, it could be 85, it could be 84.
it could be 81.
It could be 81.
Again, I'm keenly aware.
But I think in the spirit of giving, landing, it's respecting the process for 6 months instead of coming up on after 6 months and saying,
I think we
To be
still
all
respect
due
the
respect.
process.
Yeah,
But I
I
don't
mean-
know if I agree with that, Terry, only because I think we still respect the process. I think we all still want the staffing for the various public safeties. So I don't think that because we
well, I didn't hear that.
introduce 86 cents, I don't think that we've disrespected the process. I don't think that we've disrespected
Well,
staff.
my example.
They came to us with a proposed budget of 89. We want to introduce 86 and work our way from that. It may stay at 86. it may go
My
down,
specific
but-
example was when Mr. Wood said that the fire chief thereabout, I'm paraphrasing crudely, didn't need the 3 firefighters. I find that a little insulting after 6 months. After 6 months to say, well, he doesn't need that.
That's
All
not
of
fair,
a sudden
Terry,
he
because I
needs-
said at the beginning, I'm not trying to get away from getting the firemen. We need the firemen. But it's just the message and how we get there. I want to soften the blow because we know that we're going to have to go up to a certain amount of staffing within the next 3 years with also the school and all the other expenses we have. It's just making sure that we do it efficiently to where it softens the blow on all of our citizens.
Well, and again, it's the downside of not being able to go back to the tape, but that's not what you said when you started.
And then also, how can we talk about softening the blow How can we say we're gonna go for 86 cents when there's a big question mark? Unless we already, some of us have already ran the numbers for 86 cents and know how they gonna come out. I don't. Ain't nobody told me nothing about 86 cents or anything else. We just been running numbers on 89 cents. And so I say we go with the 89 cents tonight, because we can always cut back to the 87, the 86, the 85. I don't see us getting to 81. And we can do that later. What's the rush? There's a big question mark out here. I don't know what the availability, what the thing looks like until we get all the analysis in. And so I think it is premature. We birthing the baby at 6 months as opposed to 9 months when we talk about let's put it down to 86 cents when we don't know what that covers.
Well, I think they just showed you what 85 cents covers. I think we've all seen
Yeah,
that.
that was the first slide.
So I would disagree
Well,
with
no,
that.
I think what they've done is they've showed us an option,
Of
Correct.
85.
an option,
Of what
of which there are a
correct.
multitude of other
Thank you.
options.
Exactly.
Our sister city over in Stanton is
Yes.
gonna generate $660,000 more next year.
Mm-hmm.
Because they bravely went to 91 cents. We're, being the fiducial folks that we are sticking at 89. Remembering, I'm gonna use a vice mayor's words, try to the best I can of what she said a few weeks back. You know, we started this conversation at $1.06. And then we talked about 92. And then we said 92 sounds too high. Let's get down to 89. So I don't know what the urgency is tonight to go and spring on one version of one series of cuts. What we could do is we could take, say, you know what, we're not gonna give compensation adjustments to any of our general administration, none of our judicial administration, none of our parks and rec and cultural, none of our community development. We could prioritize our public safety and public works, and guess what gets back included? The Community Vitality Fund. Right? There's another option. That's not, I don't think reacting to a single slide at the beginning of a presentation after 6 months of conversation is honoring the process. I think honoring the process is an introduction of 89-cent tax rate. Go back and let's see how we can get below 89.
Okay. So now I'll open up for motions.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt it, I'll do it in the correct form, best I can.
I'm doing this right.
Introducing an ordinance imposing tax of calendar year 2025 at a tax rate of 89 cents.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second. In discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Hey.
Ayes have it, 3-2.
That motion was carried to
Yeah.
the 12th, is
Yeah.
that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, just to get that.
Yes.
Get that on record.
What about, do we wanna do a budget?
You want me to just read the motion and
Yeah, yeah.
that goes with
Yeah,
the
it keeps
89
the
cents, and then
budget
we can
going.
work to keep the or to keep the budget moving. So you would need a motion to introduce a calendar, or a fiscal year 2026 budget in the amount of $158,412,645.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, 5.
And it's forwarded to the main.
That'll be forwarded to the May 12th meeting for final consideration.
Forwarded to the 12th May, final decision. What else?
So I think, I would like to say thank you. I think, not for me to judge your performance, but, I think you guys the lady did a great job with the conversation. I think I have a conflict, personal conflict, that relates to a graduation on May 7th, so I'm gonna be looking for maybe another date, for that next work session, when it seems like we might need. So, keep your eye out on your calendars. I know we had proposed, a date that doesn't work for Mr. Wood, so, maybe we could even, if you could check for the 5th maybe, or something like that.
Cinco de Mayo?
You provided the question?
Well, I was about to say, we can get together afterwards at a local establishment.
I can't do it.
Okay.
Engineering
All right, we'll look for, I'll circulate some options, or maybe we'll meet without Mr. Schmidt.
That's fine.
It's gotta be just one day.
Oh, you
Sorry.
mean before?
Carrie, I'm kidding. The vote's for it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank y'all.
Thank
Thanks,
y'all.
everybody.
Yes, absolutely, thank you.
No, 2 days, I think, before the first and second.
We've got to
Yeah.